Good day, viewers. Welcome to a new edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali. My guest today is a former senator of the Federal Republic and someone who made a name in campaigning for democracy. That is before the return to democratic rule in Nigeria. I'm talking of Malam Shehu Sani. Welcome to the program, Shehu Sani. Should I say comrade?
Yeah, I think that's the best name for it. Yes, comrade.
But you do not look quite comradely. I mean, with your present attire, probably your stint at the Senate has tampered your comradeship.
How does a comrade supposed to look like? But I think it's about principles, and I'm still a comrade, and I prefer that than any other appellation attached to my name.
Right. We've just had the 2023 elections, which have been completed. Winners have emerged, but there is so much dust still been raised, to the extent that we've had the Department of State Security coming out to speak of some politicians maybe trying to manufacture some illegal contraption in the name of an interim government. Is that something that we should be talking about at this time when we have had 6 different transitions in Nigeria from one government to the next?
Thank you for having me in your program. Well, Nigeria's democracy is 22 years old. And within this period, there were changes of power, especially in 2015. And each time there is an election season at hand, there is the usual rising expectations and hopes that whatever is going to come ahead will be better than where we come from. The 2023 elections is one election that is different from others in the very sense that Nigerians were full of hopes and there were so much expectations. And not for anything, but for the fact that technology was going to be used to prosecute or execute the elections. And this is the most expensive elections in the history of Nigeria, with over 300 billion naira spent. So the expectations was very high in view of the fact that we are in a technological age and most of our voters are young people.
Are you suggesting that those hopes were dashed or not met?
Yes. So when you have this kind of high expectations, then what is ahead is that it's either people's expectations are met or people get disappointed. And as such, what you have seen since the elections has taken place was protests, rejection of election results, and all sort of temperature been risen everywhere. Now, in the fog that visited our country after the elections, we now have the speculations that some people were planning for an interim government. Well, as someone who has fought for democracy and sacrificed for democracy, and actually went to jail for democracy, I don't think any reasonable and morally upright Nigerian will at this time in our history subscribe to an interim national government.
But what does it mean? What does this interim government means? Because my understanding is that in a democracy, leaders always emerge through elections. We've just had one election now a few weeks back. Why are we talking about an interim government? What does it mean?
Well, you see, when I read the statement from the Department of State Security, but before then, there were rumors flying around that there were actually some people who were plotting for an interim government. Well, the report from this DSS now gave credence to that rumor. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this is not the first time. In 2014, and it's there on the internet, anybody can Google, we're in an internet age, the ruling All Progressive Congress made a statement that if the election of 2015 was rigged, that they are going to form a parallel government. Now, this time around, some people in court, whom we don't know who they are said to be plotting for an interim government. Well, it could have been, the DSS could have gone further, because plotting for an interim government is a serious treason. And if you know that there are people who are working towards undermining our democracy, breaching the laws and constitution of our country, then it's not simply about giving such a half-baked information.
Right.
You have to name them, you have to arrest them, and you have to prosecute them. That is what is done. It's but just like, hold on, it's just like now you reach out to a herbalist or Boka in Hausa language, and that Boka tells you that you have enemies, and then you ask him what are the names of the enemies, he can tell you, and you ask him what are the enemies planning, he can't give you specifics, he just say you have enemies around you.
Just a generalized claim.
So the marabout. So actually this is what this has done. Some people are plotting, and that it just stop it.
But away from plotting, maybe about a year ago, a well-known lawyer, Ape Babalola, actually came out to canvass that maybe it is better to postpone the election by 6 months and form an interim government. That is probably the first time we heard of this idea in the run-up to the 2023 election. Why the fixation with an interim government? Because I have asked you earlier, what we know of democracy is leaders are changed through elections, not through an interim arrangement.
Well, I think the advocates of interim government will be at a better position to tell you their reason. But as far as I'm concerned, Afe Babalola may have made that statement out of his own view. And you are right, you can have any view. But to work and plot for it and work towards it is a different matter.
Yeah, he didn't plot. Yes. He actually issued a statement that was widely publicized.
This is what I'm saying, that when an election is at hand, election season is at hand, people can give different opinions. But what is expected of Nigerians is that your opinion should be in line with the constitution of the country. For now, the 2023 elections are taking place, and people who rejected the result have gone to court. So you can't go to court and at the same time also be working towards an interim government. So if actually there are people who are working for an interim government, then it may not be the people who went to court. And if actually they have been working for an interim government, it's a serious treasonable offense that it shouldn't go about dispensing information, half-baked information. You'll go about taking them on as far as the law is concerned. But you can't have an interim government where the system that we operate as a country allows you to conduct election. When you win, you take over, and when you lose and you reject, you go to the court, and the court now becomes the final arbiter. So there is no space for an interim government. If there is anybody in this country that is working for an interim government, he is undermining our constitution and trying to plunge the country into chaos. Interim government is not different from military rule. It is treason. You are plotting to overthrow the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I was in INEC office some few days ago. I met a group of protesters, and I was waited to know whether they were actually protesting for cancellation of the elections or in support of their candidate. Then I heard them actually conversing for interim government. And in fact, I never had enough time. I could have stopped and asked them why. But I think it may be true But from the what I've seen, if actually things are true like this, you don't just fold your arms. The state security is not an NGO that will issue statement either condemning or supporting something.
They ought to act.
You have to act and then let the country know that these are people who are working against the Constitution of Nigeria.
To go back still to what the lawyer Afe Babalola said, maybe the idea is coming out of the practice in Pakistan. In Pakistan, usually when they are about to hold an election, there is a caretaker government that conducts the election, not the sitting government. So it's the caretaker government that normally conducts their own election in order to ensure that there is no bias or advantage for the ruling party. Is this something you think maybe Nigeria may consider at some future time away from this current issue?
You see, when I sit down and I think of the enormous powers the incumbent have and how they abuse and misuse this power to suppress any attempt to evict them out of office, then I now bend towards subscribing to that idea. What we need in this country is a free, fair, and credible elections. And those in the position of authority, whether as governors or president, usually take advantage of their office to ensure that elections are being rigged in favor of their candidate. So I am totally in support of a system where we can have a stopgap. If the states are going to be taken over by Chief Justice of the states, within the state, within 2 to 3 months for elections to take place, so be it. But this has to be contained in our constitution. For now, nothing like that. We are moving from one elected government to another. So if you say that we need to have 1 month transitional government that will conduct elections, and that has to be in our constitution, that is a different thing. But when you are plotting to have an interim government in a situation that it does not exist within our constitution, that's also something different.
Bola Tinubu and his organization, that's the president-elect, was one of the earliest people to say that there are people plotting to prevent him from being sworn in as president. Is it that same narrative that is carrying on now into the statement of the DSS?
Well, I will not be able to know whether it is the same narrative, but what I can be able to aver from this is that many people were not happy with the conduct of this election, and people are looking for solutions. And the way we are today, it appears nobody is in charge. The president-elect has no powers to do anything, and the sitting president only says he is in a hurry, he is eager to leave.
But he's still the president.
He's still
you
the
can't
president.
say nobody is in charge.
Yeah, so it is supposed to be the president who is in power that should ensure that within the very few weeks or months that he's in office, that transition is smooth, peaceful, and acceptable by the majority of Nigerians.
But what more can he do? He has set up a whole transition committee made up of even representative now, at least two representatives from the incoming government. That's the Kebbi governor and a former Lagos commissioner for Tinubu when he was governor. They are there. They are busy working under the chairmanship of the secretary to the government to ensure that this transition is smooth and okay.
You see, when a country organizes a credible elections, both the government and the opposition will rest. When an election is rigged or perceived to be rigged, even those who are not concerned or interested in politics will never rest.
But is there any election in Nigeria that was not contested?
Well, if there is any person who set the precedent for contesting elections in court and protesting against rigging of elections is President Muhammadu Buhari. In all the elections he has contested, the only one he has not gone to court is the one he won. And in all the elections he has contested, the only one that he has not protested is the one he won. So he set the stage for people refusing to congratulate their opponents. He set the stage for politicians who contest elections going to court. So he inspired this.
But that is guaranteed under a democratic setting. You can go to court to contest something you don't agree to.
Well, that is what I'm saying, that the ruling party has no reason to object to people going to court or refusing to accept the result because they set the precedent for it. I can remember that President Muhammadu Buhari was never seen in the National Council of State meeting during Eradua's time, during Jonathan's time, until he won, even the second part of Obasanjo's administration. So the politics of malice and hostility was set by the present administration and the person of President Muhammadu Buhari.
On that note, we'll go on a short break and resume the conversation when we return. Welcome back. It is still 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali, and our guest today is Comrade Shehu Sani, former member of the Nigerian Senate. Before we went on break, you were touching on the fact that outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari never accepted defeat, and that probably that set the tone for other politicians, even in this current election of 2023, not to accept defeat. Though, in his own case, he enjoyed the magnanimity of the then President Goodluck Jonathan, who called to congratulate him even before the results were declared. Shouldn't that be the culture we should be working towards in order to improve our politics?
Well, in an ideal situation, when an election is conducted, it is expected that winners and losers in court will emerge, and those who won are expected to be humble by extending the hands of friendship to those who lost, and those who lost are expected to be sportsmen and women in terms of taking the defeat with grace and honor, because if you lose today, you may win tomorrow. But that is only feasible if the election is credible and transparent. Once you have a system that has not been able to provide a level playing ground, it will be difficult for people to congratulate each other. So maybe after they've gone to court and the court has said this person actually has won and that has lost, people may change their mind. But where you have the largest objections in our history is the 2023 election, and the reasons are simple. Everyone was convinced that technology will do the magic. It will deliver an election that is unprecedented in the history of Nigeria, and that rigging and other electoral criminality will be zero.
But did the technology actually fail, or is it our expectation of it that is just too high?
Well, the technology failed because after over 300 billion was used to purchase all these IRA, beavers, materials for the elections, then some few weeks to the elections, then you hear from INEC that foreign hackers are going after our equipment, and then now
which will be expected anyway.
Yes, which they're supposed to have made provisions for that. I expected that we will conduct election with a near perfection on the way the system in the banks, our banks works.
But you mean, are you talking of the same banks that couldn't cope when the cashless and policy and the Naira redesign happened?
Yeah.
When most of their systems collapsed?
Yeah, but in Nigeria, you have over 130 million people having a bank account. But how many number of people voted in the last election? There are less than 30 million. And look at the amount of money that was used. So for the fact that technology failed Nigerians, then people became angry because it was expected that when you vote, even as a legislator, I thought that when they talk of electronic voting, I thought by the time you
But it's
vote,
not electronic. Nobody said it was electronic.
Electronic transmission of result. By the time you vote, it should be electronically transmitted. Then you had another concept saying that our system are being hacked, and as such, that is why manual was being used. So we have gone back to where we came from. So if the Nigerian Bar Association can conduct election using technology, the Nigerian Labour Congress can conduct using technology, Nigerian Union of Journalists conduct election. So it is expected that at this phase in our history, if money is not the issue, why should deploying technology be an issue in solving our electoral issues?
What
so
about
people were expecting so much.
What about, yes, people were expecting so much, but what about people's prejudices, which make them think the only election that is good is the one in which they win?
Yeah, which like the Buhari, the one he did. Yeah, he is a philosopher of it.
Okay.
So it is his own.
And maybe others have now copied that.
Almost everyone is copying Buhari now. So the only election you will accept is the one you win. And the ruling party has no moral right to object to it because they started it. And that is why everyone has taken it. But I believe that whoever is going to take over the position of leadership in Nigeria, and for now it is Asuwaju Ahmed Tinubu,
the one who has been declared as the winner of the election,
yes,
except
because
if the courts decide otherwise.
Because I've heard people saying so many things. But what is clear is that he remains the president-elect and the one that is likely going to be sworn in. But his legitimacy can only be affirmed by the courts because people have gone there to challenge it. So to me, I think it's a historic opportunity for him to ensure that even though the elections that brought him was heavily contested, he should toe the line of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua by going into far-reaching electoral reforms so that the next elections will be cleaner and more decent than the one that brought him to power. And it's possible to do that. And the first thing he should do as a president-elect is to go beyond the boundaries of people who voted for him or who supported him or who contributed to his victory. Because wisdom, knowledge, and vision may be on the other side of your life. So he has to do it. The concept we have of power in Nigeria is that when people rise to the position of power, they don't see themselves as servants. They don't see themselves as people who are there to serve. They see themselves as conquerors, and other people have been conquered. So if you go there with this mentality, you are bound to make the same mistake. You won an election that was heavily contested, which also international observer groups and up to now the Western world are yet to congratulate him. Then he can use the opportunity to
Which Western country has not congratulated the president-elect? I have seen the one of the US. I believe the UK have done same. So which other, and are we always waiting for validation from the West?
Well, we are waiting for validation from the West because of the fact that the West have always made contributions to our elections, which we happily accept. It's the concept in Africa. When election is taking place, you collect money from European Union, collect money from Canada, collect money from United States as a contribution to your elections. And then when they say the election is not free and fair, now you tell them that they should not interfere in your internal affairs. It comes with a price.
But the conclusions I have seen of the observers is that yes, there are some issues with the election, but that they reflect the general direction of people's wishes in the result. That is basically what they are saying. They are not disputing that the election held. They are not disputing who got what, that it's a fair reflection of what happened, in which case it is the result that has been declared, which is okay.
I don't think so. The observers which I have read their report, was a damning report on Nigeria's elections, and saying that the U.S. has yes, actually, as an independent country, our system, our democracy, ought not to wait for validation from the Western world. But everything of our country is about the Western world. Our economy is about the Western world. The sickness of our leaders is about the Western world. The children of our leaders go to the West. Everything is West.
But I thought comrades like you are trying to upset that, not trying to further consolidate that kind of
we are talking of now
state of thought.
We are talking of the dependency of the political elite, the political establishment to the Western world.
Which you are trying to upstage.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I have never been to the West for being sick, but I don't even get sick to that level of going to that country. Perhaps I'm not up to that age. But it's the mentality of Nigerian leaders. All their life they will be attending Nigerian hospitals, their children will be attending Nigerian schools. The moment they assume the position of leaders, you see them for eyes, for nose, for mouth, for ears, they are all in the West checking their health and their children. That's why most times you see their first children and second children have all studied in either ABU, BUK, or University of Lagos. But the later children are all studying Oxford, Yale, and other things. So naturally, the opportunity of office led to this. To me, going back to our point, the opportunity for Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now. I don't belong to the APC, but I know we share a lot of history. During the struggle for democracy in 1993, struggling for Abiola's mandate, the Nadeko, while we are campaigning for democracy, and someone like you was in Lagos covering all the struggle, our arrest, detention, and other things. So we share history. He has actually labored, he struggled, he made sacrifices for democracy more than any other person who is contesting or who has contested.
So you literally agree with him, Emile Okan, that it is his turn?
Well, if that is, he's talking to APC now, he's not talking to generality of Nigerians. And I believe also, without him, President Buhari could not have been president. I was in APC because I was a founding member of APC. I know that. But the election now that brought him to power is heavily contested. And he has an opportunity to get things right. No matter what it is, Nigeria must move forward.
But since you alluded to June 12th, which is it was the one that brought out the first set of interim government in Nigeria under the late Shonekan. Is there any basis to compare that situation and the current situation in which the election has been declared, a winner has emerged, some people are not happy, and probably they are helping to plot all the unease that we have within the political space?
Well, ideally, and in line with the diktats of our constitution, and also in line with the spirit of our constitution, an election has been conducted and a winner has emerged. And the next thing is for the winner to be sworn in, and those who object to it will continue to do that in court. If the court comes out to say that the election was rigged, they will bring him down for a new election. But as long as the Constitution remains the Constitution as it is without being amended, there is no room, there is no space, there is no field, there is no right to have an interim government.
Very good Nigeria. Final point from you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on this program.
Thank you for having me.
Viewers, that is it. It's 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. Keep a date with us.